Welcome to the Long Blue Leadership Podcast and Long Blue Line Podcast Network special coverage of National Character and Leadership Symposium 2025. I'm your host, Ted Robertson, Multimedia and Podcast Specialist for the Air Force Academy Association of Graduates and Foundation. The theme for this year's symposium was all about Warfighters to Win. Attendees heard from leaders who embody and model the warrior spirit of our Air Force and Space Force. For our future leaders, tough-mindedness, tireless motivation, and an unwavering commitment to defend our nation will define their journeys. We spoke with the organizers and with speakers and panelists who came to NCLS from all across the military and academia. Now let's get right into it. Joining me today for our opening segment of our special coverage of NCLS 2025, Danielle Brines, who is the NCLS Program Director, and Dr. Michele Johnson, NCLS Speaker Engagement Team Lead. These are folks that you might not have heard from before. You're very much behind the scenes, but without you, NCLS would be missing two very big pieces.
Nice to be here.
That's the voice of Danielle. Michele.
Thank you for having us today. We're excited to talk about NCLS 2025.
It's a treat to have you both here. We're here together to sort of set the stage for what you're going to hear in this edition of Long Blue Leadership. This is the 32nd year, and Danielle, you shared that you've been with the organization here on the Air Force Academy for 22 of the last 32 years. Has your job always been NCLS and putting that on?
It has. It's always been NCLS. Took over the role of the program director for about the last 8 years or so. But yes, always involved in NCLS.
One of the things we want to talk about is the what and why of Center for Character and Leadership Development. Danielle, you've described this operation as 100% cadet focused. Talk about CCLD and what that means for all of you here and for the cadets.
Well, what that means for CCLD is that we are working with the cadets to generate NCLS, to plan and execute from start to finish a 15 to 18 month planning cycle. Cadets volunteer to work NCLS throughout the year, and there are a lot of cadets who volunteer to do that.
And Michele, how do you find your way to Center for Character and Leadership Development?
I've actually been in CCLD 3 different times, but every time I've been teamed with Danielle working with NCLS. So our first time working together was in 08-09. And then when I joined the team in CCLD in 2009, 2010, we actually worked together on NCLS that year.
Now we're going to talk about some little known facts about NCLS. I want to divert for just a moment to our new soup. This is his first year and his first experience with this. Thus, the theme, Warfighters to Win. You shared a couple of things that I don't think most people know about NCLS. One of those things being, like you noted, it's a year-long development experience, and it is very cadet-facing, of course.
Absolutely. There's approximately about 50 cadets and faculty who work together throughout the entire year to plan and execute the superintendent's vision of what NCLS is each year.
The superintendent informs what happens here at NCLS and CCLD quite a bit. And there are three top priorities. Michele, let's start with you.
USAFA has 3 priorities that our new superintendent has given us that we are working to support and align all of the activities with NCLS to our current theme, which is Warfighters to Win. And next year, our theme will likely be Leaders of Character and Quality. So we look forward to putting the program together to support that theme as well. Our focus this year was really on warfighter readiness, warfighters, the ethos, the warfighter ethos, and then also helping prepare our future graduating lieutenants to be ready to serve on day one. We hear General Bauernfeind talk about that a lot from his experience in the special operations field. He wants our lieutenants to be ready to serve on day one, either in the Air Force or the Space Force. And so that's what everything we did this year focused on, emphasizing that for our cadets.
I'd love for you each to talk about some of the speakers that came to speak this year. And then we'll talk about the speakers that you're going to hear from later on in this podcast that we got to interview. And I do want to extend a very heartfelt thanks from the Association of Graduates and Foundation for year 2 setting us up here in the Honors Conference Room, where we have been able to build a studio and pull some of those speakers and panelists in. And they've been just lots of fun to talk to. Spoiler alert, one of them was Dr. John Torres, NBC National Television's go-to doctor. So talking about these priorities of General Bauernfeind's, warfighters to win, leaders of character and quality, critical thinkers to adapt. Now we match up the speakers who can come and deliver that message. Talk about some of the speakers that were here.
Well, I'll tell you, Colonel Black, she was absolutely amazing. As I watched in the audience how the cadets responded to her, I thought that's when you know you're getting the right speakers that the cadets can really connect with and respond to. So I thought she was amazing.
She was great. I loved listening to Colonel Black too. She had a wonderful presentation. One of my favorite speakers was Lieutenant Colonel Aliyah Nadim, who I know you didn't interview necessarily for the podcast, but and I get so excited when we talk about her because this is the second time that she's actually spoken at NCLS. And the first time she was an ROTC cadet at the University of New Mexico. She came and shared her story, but she shared her story this time too. And you could hear a pin drop in Arnold Hall Theater when she was speaking.
This takes fuel, and it takes a lot of fuel. So that means people who are involved, who are helping to fund. The class of 59, for example, is deeply, deeply involved every year, as I understand it, in helping to bring the speakers here. If there are travel expenses and other kinds of expenses, they help to do that. What other organizations are involved in helping to fuel this event every year?
Well, the class of 73 is huge. They are our flagship sponsor. Class of 74, as we well know, they are providing the Waken Award presentation and things along those lines. So we absolutely love that. Class of 93 has been doing the 12OAY for us for a number of years, and we absolutely appreciate that. And then the class of 77, Earl and Candy Enix have been an amazing support team for us. And so class of 77, most recently, the class of 83 has come on board, and we're pleased to have the class of 83 in their support. And last but not least, class of 04, I understand the class of 04 right now is doing their fundraising. And so we're excited to see where that will lead. I want to make sure I don't miss John Muse, the Muse Family Foundation, who is huge as well. All of those I've mentioned are the USAFA grads, are donors for the USAFA grads.
So what I want to do now, Danielle and Michele, is talk a little bit about who you're going to hear in the following segments of the podcast. And we spoke with them about what message did you want to deliver? What was your experience like? We talked a little bit about each of their backgrounds and what led them back here to the Academy. Not all of these people are grads, but all of them are 100% invested in NCLS and in making a difference in the lives of the cadets that they're speaking to. Dr. Doug Lindsay, who you have a direct attachment to, is the executive editor of the Journal of Character and Leadership Development, joined me. He's our very next segment, as a matter of fact, and we do work closely with Dr. Lindsay as one of our hosts of Long Blue Leadership Podcast, among other things. He gathers and disseminates information from academia about the science, the psychology, and other aspects of teaching character and leadership development, which manifests itself into the Journal of Character and Leadership Development. In that segment, you will also hear that the Journal of Character and Leadership Development is available to anybody, and it is online and digital. It is a very potent publication, making a huge impact for people who are studying in the field of leadership. Another conversation that we had that you'll hear right after Dr. Lindsay was with First Lieutenant Gabrielle Sutejo and Captain Noel Zamat. They are part of Strike Eagle squadrons, and they will tell you the message that they wanted to leave, but they were really here to talk about their career field and the path to becoming a member of a Strike Eagle squadron. In the next segment, after you hear our conversation with Gabrielle and Noel, comes Major Tara Holmes, Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Murphy, who is a graduate of 2007, and then Colonel Jonathan Sawtell. They are representing Task Force HOPE, Crisis Leadership and Moral Injury Recovery. We talked to two other individuals, one connected directly with NCLS as a speaker. That was Dr. John Torres, who we mentioned earlier, class of 82. And his message to cadets is no excuses. In the last segment today, I'm actually going to introduce you to Brian Grossman. Brian is a member of the communications team at the AOGN Foundation. Brian talked to Captain Sullenberger Award for Courage award winners. Danielle Brines, NCLS Program Director, and Dr. Michele Johnson, NCLS Speaker Engagement Team Lead. I cannot thank you both enough for spending some time with me here on Long Blue Leadership Podcast. Coming up next, Dr. Doug Lindsay. My next guest is Dr. Doug Lindsay, USAFA class of 92. He's joining us from Arkansas today. He is the executive editor of the Journal of Character and Leadership Development, which is a publication of the Center for Character and Leadership Development here in Polaris Hall at the Air Force Academy. In addition, he's an author, and his latest book is In Your Moment. We'll ask him to talk about that for a couple of minutes. And on occasion, we're very fortunate. Dr. Lindsay joins us as a host for Long Blue Leadership, and you can look in Season 2 and Season 1 and hear a couple of the episodes that he did. We always enjoy when Doug is able to join us. Doug, welcome to Long Blue Leadership, our special edition of NCLS coverage.
Honored to be connected here and excited to chat with you.
So let's talk a little bit about the event itself. It is themed every year. This year, I think you used the phrase underpinning theme is all about warrior ethos, articulated as Warfighters to win. Let's talk about how those two things are related and connected.
That's a great point. I think as we think about preparing warfighters to win and creating the conditions to win, we always understand there's a human as part of that. We have great technology and weapon systems, obviously, part of our development. But, the underpinning of that is having people in that. So as we think about characteristics like tough-mindedness, tireless motivation, vigilance, commitment, those are all really, enhancers and multipliers or individuals or pilots or airmen that are going to wield those weapons. And so we have to make sure that we have a strong foundation, obviously at the Academy, creating leaders of character that we are able to trust our airmen to wield that appropriately. And warrior ethos is a big part of that so that we can set conditions for our warfighters to win.
Now, it is the Center for Character and Leadership Development that produces the Symposium every year. Talk about that connection, how those two things tied together, and how the center itself is sort of a feeder and teaches cadets through this event and through other programs, not only leadership, so that they can execute on the things that they are taught and they're going out into the force to do.
Yeah, it's a great point. The Center for Character and Leader Development at the Academy is charged with helping to understand what goes into character and leader development. I think at the Air Force Academy, we fundamentally believe that you can develop and grow in character and leadership. It's a component part of that. And so the center is positioned perfectly to be able to not only advise, but inform and teach and train both cadets and faculty and staff on just that, the leader of character framework, how we think about developing character. NCLS is a great part of that because it's a program where we bring in external speakers to talk to the cadets and staff to really help them understand, broaden of their thoughts around character, take a look at how people are doing character and leader development in the professional world across different domains of sports and academics and the military. And really the center kind of sits at the nexus of that for the Academy of being, a broker of that information and being able to point people in the right direction. So NCLS, we're able to kind of bring that focus down over a couple of days to bring in scholars to help us push our thinking and understanding around both character and leadership development.
And then nested in with CCLD is the Journal of Character and Leadership Development. That speaks to how you serve and support people who are faculty, staff, who write and contribute some incredibly rich, comprehensive pieces on character and leadership development.
That's correct. I think part of what we want to make sure that we're doing is that we're not so myopic in our approach to character leader development that we only look at what we learn from the military. There's a lot of great research being done out there in academic arenas and by practitioners as well that really give us different lenses and insight into how character is formed, and then what other programs are going on out there. So that the Journal of Character and Leader Development allows us to not only highlight the great work that is being done in those areas at USAPA, but also bring awareness externally to that, and then bring those external opinions into USAPA to help us understand what we're doing. When we talk about, at the end of the day, our military members are humans. And so the psychology about how we think and grow and develop is not, just specific to the military. So we try to paint a broad brush so that people can really look at the science of character and leader development as well as the application. I think we need to make sure that we're always really based and speak in the research and what we know, and then what is actually working out there, what kind of programs and initiatives people are finding success in.
All right. As we close out, Doug, thank you for joining me today. Is the JCLD available for anyone?
It is. It's open source and it's on the web. It's at jcldusafa.org. It's available to anybody. And so if you haven't taken a look at it or haven't taken a look at it lately, I encourage you to head on over there and take a look at it. And if you've got a thought, an idea, or research study you want to do, we encourage you to submit that as well. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you for that, Doug. And you've made your entire career out of leadership and character development. You've devoted your professional life to that, and that's manifested itself in the most recent book you've written called In Your Moment. You want to talk about that a little bit and how people can get a hold of that book if they'd like?
Great point. It was kind of a labor of love. And what I really have learned over the years is how we're showing up to the moments. Our life is made up of moments. Some of them are more consequential and significant than others. The book is designed as a way to help people understand, think about, and really maximize those moments so they can break through the thresholds that are in their lives.
Doug, where's the book available for folks who are interested in the science of leadership and character development?
It's available on Amazon and any other platform and publisher that you want to go through.
All righty. We appreciate your time, Dr. Doug Lindsay, class of 92, joining us from Arkansas. Dr. Lindsay, thank you for everything you do.
You're most welcome. It's an honor to be here, and I hope everybody enjoys Ncls and the events going on.
My guests now are First Lieutenant Gabrielle Dare Sutejo, class of 21. And I just want to make sure we pronounce that properly.
Yes, that was correct.
Okay, you are a wonderful trainer. And we're going to talk a little bit about your background, what you're doing now. You're on the Intel side. You have been part of a panel discussion here at NCLS this year and talking to very eager cadets. We're going to talk about just how that worked out after you spoke, because that was, I think, a very interesting moment. We're also joined by Captain Noel Zamat, class of 18. Your class is Fight to Win, and Gabby, you're allowing me to call you either Gabby or Dare. You are no doubt, no fear. Let's start just a little bit about your experience here as cadets, and then let's talk about the idea that you've got a few years under your belt out in the force. You're doing things with Strike Eagles. What are young officers teaching aspiring officers? So let's start with you, Dare, if you don't mind, and let's talk about your time here as a cadet.
So my time here was definitely a very interesting and unique experience, I would say, because I was here during COVID during my last few years. So there's some things that we didn't get to experience, and then some unique aspects that we also got to experience, just dealing with adapting to how COVID worked, testing, dealing with spacing, and then like not being able to attend or go through certain things. So I think I definitely learned a lot during my last 2 years here, just with being able to adapt and take the situation that you have and take it with grace. So like it wasn't the best time, but it was a time that I got to go through with my fellow like classmates, and it helped set me up with my career of like, hey, the scenario is not going to always be perfect. Your intel is not going to always be perfect, but you have to take with what you have and go with it.
What led you into the intel side of the world?
So I was a fast poli-sci major here, and I was really interested in like cultural aspects of things, and then the geopolitical side of the house, and that really set me up with intel because you're going and pulling data and knowledge from not only the geopolitical side of things, but then providing that to other people so they can understand it in the context. So that's just one of my passions of what I really liked.
So off you go, you're in the force. It's a few years later, you're back now. You want to talk about what you're doing now to people who are looking for their career path. They want to know if what you're doing is the right path for them. Mm-hmm. And here it is at NCLS, your chance to talk to a lot of cadets.
It's been an honor to be able to be here, talk about my experience as an intel officer, and being able to hopefully bring some more people on board because intel is a taxing job, but it can be really fun and fulfilling.
Noel, welcome. It's good to have you here, class of 18. Something tells me you both jumped at the chance to come back here and talk to cadets about your careers because you seem very happy in your careers right now, like you're on the right path.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that for my career personally, I definitely agree with everything Dare said. For her career, Intel, I can echo that Intel played a massive role in what we did downrange. Intel in the jet is what we like to say. For my career field, the Combat Systems Officer, WISO, Strike Eagle WISO, there's not a lot of people who actually go through that training pipeline straight out of the academy. And so to be able to come and talk to these cadets, get these really good questions from younger cadets or even firsties who are going off to do that is really, really humbling. And I'm very proud to see that there is interest in that career field and that there are people interested and passionate in learning more about it.
General Bauernfeind asked that the two of you linger after your most recent talk while you were here at NCLS, and you kind of sat down on the edge of the stage, and what happened after that?
It was an awesome experience. So he basically dismissed that specific audience, and then it was actually all five of us. So all five of the panelists got to stay behind, the two Navy aviators, and then myself, Dare, and then Captain Boards LaCory, who's a Strike Eagle pilot. Really awesome to just see all the cadets. Some left, obviously they had to go get their food from Mitch's, and then a lot of other people actually came down to the stage, and we just sat on the edge, the ledge of the stage, and talked to them. Basically that was our kind of like more informal peer-to-peer or maybe mentor-to-peer type discussion. A lot of cadets came down with some really great questions, not only about like, hey, what's it like flying a fighter jet, but really, really poignant questions about what we did downrange. We were in a classified briefing, and there were some great questions. They were professional and kept it all unclassified, but they were truly interested in more than just things going boom on a TV screen, and the leadership aspects and the tactics of what it takes to be a warfighter in the spirit of this NCLS.
Gabby?
I agree, absolutely. I wouldn't say I was surprised, but I was a little bit surprised by how interested people are, not just like in the cool aviators, but in the intel side of things. They asked some really great questions, not only about like what Intel does as a whole, but some of the things that we provide to the fight, just either home station when we're not deployed and when we're training and getting ready to deploy, as well as what we do downrange deployed when we're in the thick of it in the mission. So
I imagine you saw some really wide-eyed cadets in front of you asking you all those pointed questions, and an opportunity for you to give back and share about what you do.
Yes. So I would say that it gives you also perspective. You're like, hey, what do I do? And how does that translate to what some of these people are trying to accomplish with their future? But like, hey, I'm considering Intel. Like, what can you tell me about like what this does? Like, not just like, hey, this is providing information and briefings to commanders. Like, what do you guys do as like an intel officer? And it's not just the intel side of things. It's the admin and taking care of your people and getting people trained from like either airmen, NCOs up and above.
No?
Yeah, I agree with what Dare kind of is saying there about like being able to defend and explain more about your career field. Nobody at my job in my squadron, is in the habit of asking me, hey, what exactly does a WISO do? Because I just go to work and I just do my job. And it's difficult to actually express that to cadets who maybe have never met a WISO before, or maybe have never talked to people in a fighter squadron before. I know that, we try to represent all of that equally and do a great job through all the AOCs. But it's been really awesome. I've had several engagements now where I can, see the wide-eyed looks like you're talking about, and simple stories. Doesn't have to be exactly the stuff we did downrange, but it's the little things in the community that we have in the CAF, at the tip of the spear is what we like to say. And I think that the cadets really resonated specifically yesterday with some of those stories that we told.
What was the message that you wanted to leave those people in your audience with?
I would say for me, even if you are like a young lieutenant who has just been newly commissioned, you will have received the training and are expected to step up to the plate and do the JOB every day and just accomplish the mission and support in whatever way you can. Even if you are new, you can still bring that information, that intelligence, that knowledge to the fight.
Absolutely. And to add on to that, I think that really when you leave here, you're all going to be lieutenants, and you all have to learn from each other, lean on each other, especially to get through programs like UPT or UCT or Intel Tech School, really anything like that. And then that's where that humility aspect is really crucial. So like we went down range, we did things that had never been accomplished before in the Strike Eagle, but we didn't beat our chest about it. We, the squadron as a whole, the entire apparatus, all the maintainers, the support professionals, the aviators, Intel, absolutely, that you've heard from Dare, everyone was very humble. We've had many, I am not here on this TDY as the only chief that are talking to people outside of my squadron. And that humility is absolutely crucial. And I've talked to many cadets here at the Academy that I see that in their eyes, and I know they're going to go off and accomplish way greater things than I have. And that's a huge part of it.
First Lieutenant Gabby Dare Sutejo, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you, class of 21.
Rise.
And there it is, Rise. And Captain Knowles Mott, class of 18.
Zamp.
There it is. Thank you both for being here. We are very happy to have had the opportunity to talk to you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
My next group of guests are here representing Task Force Hope, Crisis Leadership and Moral Injury Recovery. There is a nickname for this that will help you understand what this is very, very quickly. And I hope you won't mind my sharing that this is a first for me. I'm looking forward to discussing it with you and hearing about it. To my left, I want to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Murphy. He is Air Force Academy class of 2007. We'll let him share a little bit about his background here in just a moment. Leading the charge here is Colonel Jonathan Sawtell. And he is the person sort of behind this from way back in 2010. There is a little bit of a story there. And then Major Tara Holmes, who has a really interesting title and a great connection to the Center for Character and Leadership Development. The way you're described as somebody who basically is leading 4,200 cadets and helping them understand the art of leadership and character development and the science of it. And now we're into the psychology of it.
Right. Yeah, it's a very generous description. I definitely run programs that impact every cadet here at USAFA, specifically in terms of character and leadership development.
Share a little bit of your background.
So my Air Force background is I'm actually a OTS commission, so kind of a fish out of water here a little bit. But I was a B-52 electronic warfare officer. That's my background, my training. And then I kind of went to the instructor side and really fell in love with it. And I had some great mentors and leaders that helped me to take what I love and make it my full-time job. So I've been working in education and training, I guess since about 2017.
And you and Colonel Murphy work very, very closely together.
We did, yes.
Yeah.
At Squadron Officer School, where Colonel Sawtell was our squadron commander way back then. So
the three of you kind of found each other and came together around this task force initiative.
You got it.
Okay. I'm really looking forward to getting into some more of the details about that. Let's go to Colonel Brandon Murphy, a 2007 grad. What was your experience like as a cadet, and what are you doing these days, and what's next for you?
Yeah, I'm one of those unique cadets that loved it, mostly because I actually got to go to what most cadets would call real school for a year to find out that a little structure was probably good for me. So I came and excelled here. I had a great time, did track and field, got to do the jump program, and just overall had a blast. My first assignment out of here, I got to stick around in Peterson, work at NORAD Northcom, off to pilot training with the Navy, And then I was lucky enough to score an MC-12, so flying Overwatch missions. Did a number of deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. Then a nice long tour in Japan doing staff, over to Air University where I met these two lovely people. And now I'm back here doing a great job that I enjoy every day. Director of Operations down at the Air Force Academy's airfield at the Operations Support Squadron. So it's a pretty sweet deal.
Not too long from now, a step up for you, as I understand it.
Yeah, planning to take over this June.
Nice. Congratulations. Great to have you here. Okay, Colonel Sautel, we want you to sort of kick off this conversation in earnest. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about your background. And you brought a special guest with you today.
I did. So I'm Jonathan Sautel. I was a career special ops weather officer, serving on special ops weather teams, and that would be an AFSOC in the Special Tactics Organization. So my brothers would have been Combat Control, Pararescue, and TAC-P. My daughter Esme is an aspiring Academy cadet, freshman in high school right now. So she's my guest of honor here during the National Character and Leadership Symposium, and we're learning so much as we're meeting people. You know, the fact is that as a weather guy, my job was to anticipate the future, but I needed good data. So they created the special operator version so we can conduct reconnaissance missions, whether we're jumping in, sneaking in, swimming in, and figuring out what the weather environment would be so that we could advise special ops forces on what they needed to do to win every time and buy down risk. And that comes at a cost. You know, when leaders have to make decisions, there are always going to be aspects of the decision you wish you could have done better, or information you wish you could have known more. After my first deployment in Afghanistan, there was a mass casualty event that I was a part of, and I helped triage the wounded and the dead, and some of those memories stuck with me. And as a young lieutenant about to be a captain, I felt like I needed to set the example for my operators, that I could endure these things, that they didn't bother me, and that we just needed to press on. But the fact is, behind the scenes, the burdens were getting very heavy. They were affecting my relationships. They were affecting my ability to access joy. And I was modeling, honestly, a phony version of leadership. But we didn't know any better. We didn't know any better. And my guys were seeing worse things and carrying worse burdens. And all I could do was act like nothing was wrong. I got to Squadron Officer School, which is our leadership school for captains and civilians. Every captain goes in the Air Force right now. I was about 6 years in, and they said, hey, write a paper, the most pressing issue the Air Force needs, and we'll send it to the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. And I said, hey, we need a first aid kit for mental and emotional injury. There are so many officers enlisted experiencing things, experiencing traumas. We know how to make our beds and salute. We know how to wear uniforms. We know how to prosecute the missions we've been given, but we don't get much training, if any, on what to do about our thoughts and feelings after the fact. And so that paper in July of 2010, written at Maxwell Air Force Base, became a project, a passion project that I worked on for the next 9 years until I took command at Squadron Officer School, the Squadron of the Centurions, and I was blessed to have Murph and Tara Holmes here on the team. And the fact is that all we did was we asked captains every class, who wants to be a part of making a first aid kit for mental and emotional injury? And without hesitation, we got 20 to 30 every time. And Murph used a methodology called design thinking, kind of found it out of Stanford Design School, to leverage the ideas of the students to help build the foundation for what it is today.
Colonel Murphy, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, so this wasn't anything, there's no prescription for this. Really what we found was there's a number of different things and barriers and problems that we had to look at. And we found that simply discussing and exploring ways forward was cathartic in itself. And then from the ideas that these captains and others brought to the table, we were able to take what we consider the best of many options through many iterations of running Task Force Hope to come together to build a more concise version that we're presenting here at NCLS.
When did you land on the name Task Force Hope? Was it from the very beginning?
It was when I came to Murph and I said, I need your help. I said, let's just call it Task Force Hope for now.
And it stuck.
And you know, a task force comes together to address a problem. And this task force was 20 to 30 students at a time every 6 weeks over the course of a couple years. And then the participants going forward. So you say, even though so many of the names, well, we don't know, they are all a part of this task force. So
that is astounding. I'm in awe because this is the first time I'm hearing about this, and I'm hoping that on the Long Blue Leadership Podcast, we get to talk about it more. This is a form of leadership that really does touch the psychology of leadership, that part of that art and science. Major Holmes, thoughts that you'd like to add?
I'll just say that I'm super privileged to be a part of this. I think these two really did the heavy lifting, and they're very very generous to have me participating. I think what I've tried to bring to this project is my academic background, and because some of these terms and concepts that we're talking about are present, in the research, in the literature, and just kind of bringing the research and the practice to a meeting place, so that it satisfies the needs for all kinds of learners.
Thank you so much, Colonel Murphy and Major Holmes. Colonel Sawtelle, I'm going to give you the last few words and final thoughts here today.
In closing, I would say, that when we address physical injury, if we don't address physical injury, it can lead to infection, shock, things like that. But the tragedy in not addressing mental and emotional injury is that it infects our relationships. It impedes our potential to lead and love to where we need and where our people deserve. And so that's the call to action. There is hope in everything that we've experienced, that we can become more emotionally available, we can become stronger, we can translate our pasts into meaningful futures if we can get the courage and if we only knew that was something that was available to us.
Colonel Jonathan Sawtelle, Lieutenant Colonel Brandon Murphy, Major Tara Holmes, a wonderful discussion here today. And I want to ask one final question. What is the main takeaway that you want to leave with cadets before you are finished with NCLS this year?
Cadets need to understand that they are stepping into a world where things will happen to them that are largely out of their control, and that things that they will think and feel are also out of their control. But with the right tools, they can translate that into hope and strength and meaningful experience for others as they lead and model who they really are, what they've really overcome, rather than front of a fake well-being.
And that is Task Force Hope, Crisis Leadership, and Moral Injury Recovery. All three of you, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
My next guest, retired Colonel John Torres, class of 82, best in blue, as you say, Dr.
Right.
Torres.
It's been a while, but you always remember the motto.
Yeah, you haven't ever stayed far away from the academy. You're right here among us in the Springs.
It was funny because my roommate and I, the day we graduated, we swore we were never coming back to Colorado. And he's got family here. I live here. It's one of those places that for some reason as a grad, you just can't escape. And it's, obviously Colorado is a beautiful environment, but when you're at the academy, you don't really appreciate it because we always used to say we're like in a jail looking out. My family's from Albuquerque, so spent a lot of time in there. So I went to med school and residency. So the Southwest area is kind of near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, I've enjoyed talking with you kind of off mic because we have a couple things in common. You used to live on the street that I live on.
Exactly.
And
it's a small world.
My late dad was in Albuquerque for 30 some odd years. What a great city.
It's a great city. The people are great. The food is wonderful.
Oh, yes.
And so that's
Garcia's on 4th Street.
Oh yeah. No, I've been there. Yeah, I miss it. And then the Frontier, which is by the university. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's the best breakfast burritos in the world.
Yeah. No, I did the Frontier a couple of times.
Yeah.
Cinnamon rolls are the thing there. Yeah.
The heart attack on a plate.
Totally. Speaking of heart attacks, you found your way to the medical profession. That's why we call you doctor.
Exactly. And so I ended up started off out of here at the Air Force Academy as a pilot, did that for a little less than 8 years. And then during during my pilot stint, I realized that I'd always really wanted to be a doctor. And so I started looking into it, decided why not try this, got out, went to medical school. And then even though I really didn't want anything to do with the military, because I'd been in the military all my life between my dad's service and my service, I went back in a year and a half later and went into National Guard and Reserves. And so a total of 32 years active duty reserves guard.
I have heard this place described as a leadership laboratory and a place where character is developed along the way.
Exactly. And my theme here, when they asked me to come up with a theme, I spent a few days and I was kind of sitting there going, what can I talk about that has to do with leadership and has to do with my experiences? And I settled on this no excuse. And the reason I did that is because when we were here, our knee-jerk response to anything they asked us, why did this happen? Why did you do this? If we were getting blamed for something, was no excuse, sir, or no excuse, ma'am. You just had to take the blame whether you did it or not. And there were times where my classmate would have done something and he's standing right next to me. I had to take the blame. No excuse, sir. No excuse, ma'am. And he couldn't say anything. So what that did is that said, that basically started you down that path of personal responsibility of, even though I might not have been the one doing this, I am responsible for it because he's my roommate. I'm responsible for my roommate as well as he is for me. And so we're in this together.
Here you are, and you're giving back. And is this your first time at NCLS?
No, this is the first time at NCLS, but not the first time doing anything with the association or the other entities that are here. And I think that's important. It obviously lends itself to the fact I live in the area, makes it much easier. But even regardless, one of the other things that I think the Academy kind of leans you towards is doing that, giving back, whether it's here, whether it's some of the humanitarian trips I took, just basically saying, I am part of this society. It's only going to be better if I work towards that. And by working towards that, I need to do something to help out.
Yeah, we're really talking about the long blue line and
exactly
great tradition. Dr. Torres, what final thoughts would you like to leave us with today?
And I think the main thing is just what we talked about, that this one institute is a great institute. You don't always recognize that when you're here because oftentimes you're, as I tell people, you're kind of beating your head against the wall and it's hard to realize all the other things that are going on around you. And it's not till you get out and you start using the words that, I'm an Air Force Academy grad, that you start realizing, okay, this means something. This is important. And so even though I don't go around wearing the ring all the time, I certainly don't go around, wearing any kind of Air Force Academy hats or any memorabilia like that because of some of the other things I do. Still having that there, you carry yourself a certain way, people look at you a certain way, and I think that's just important to realize.
Can't tell you what a privilege it is to become acquainted with you. I hope we cross paths again very, very soon. Glad you're here, and thank you very much for giving us a little bit of time. That is the voice of retired Colonel John Torres, class of 82, as you say, best in blue, and no excuses.
There you go.
In our final segment today of our special coverage of NCLS 2025, I want to introduce you to Mr. Brian Grossman, who is the Association of Graduates and Foundation's Senior Director of Strategic Communications and the Managing Editor of Checkpoints Magazine. So if you're a member of AOG, you're receiving that either in hard copy or digitally, and you get that once a quarter. And in fact, Brian, as we sit here, you're kind of wrapping things up for the March edition of the Checkpoints Magazine. Brian, welcome to Long Blue Leadership.
Hey, Ted, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Fun to have you here, and we're going to hear more of you. You have a podcast coming up that is part of our continuing coverage of NCLS 2025. You got to talk to an exceptional group of 4 people. Tell us about who those were, and then as we close out, we'll talk about when you'll be able to hear Brian's first podcast with us.
That's right. Thanks, Ted. Yeah, as some might know, 32nd NCLS just wrapped up, and part of our conversation during NCLS was with the winners of the Sullenberger Award for Courage. This is the second time, I believe, that this award has been given out. Inaugural award was given out in 2022 to Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Pelbath. And this year, the award was given out to 4 recipients, Captain Logan Batman Cowan, Captain Claire Atomic Edens, and Captain Carla Guns Nava. The 3 of them are from USAFA class of 2018. Also a recipient was Captain Kyle Royal Abraham. Captain Abraham is class of 2019. And just a really quick rundown as to why they won the award. People are familiar with the attacks on Israel in October 2023. As part of the response to those attacks, the 4 captains were involved in April of 2024 in shooting down multiple drones that were launched from Iran to Israel. And believe it or not, Captain Edens and Captain Nava have 5 kills to their credit, which makes them 2 of the first female modern day aces. So really cool story from the 2 of them. Well, actually all 4, but the 2 of them especially because of how historical that event was. I want to say a total of like 9 drones were shot down by this group, and I think 60 or 70 drones total by American forces just that evening alone. So we talked to all 4 about that evening. We talked to them about what it's like to get such a prestigious honor. They discussed their time here at the Academy. Some of them knew each other, some didn't. They talk about their why when it comes to service and what comes next in their illustrious careers.
Brian, when do you intend to release that podcast?
This is going to come out shortly after, or probably around the time the March checkpoints start hitting mailboxes, the second half of March. So probably mid-March toward the end of the month.
Your impressions of NCLS this year?
Oh, NCLS was great. This was my second NCLS that I got to attend. I went last year and then this year, and there were a couple speakers that really blew me away. So the format was a little bit different. Warfighters to win was the theme, and we do talk about that a little bit with our guests in the podcast too, what that theme means to them. And so last year's NCLS was a little broader, I think, in the speakers. This one was all about the warrior ethos and people who had experienced it. They didn't just study combat and the warrior ethos. They were bona fide warriors. They had been out there and done it. So lots of interesting stories.
One final plug for the podcast, Brian.
Yep, Long Blue Leadership. Look for this episode. It's the bonus episode for NCLS, and it'll be coming out in mid-March. Hope you enjoy it.
Brian Grossman, Senior Director of Strategic Communications and Managing Editor of Checkpoints Magazine for the Association of Graduates and Foundation. And that's it. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Ted.
I'm Ted Robertson. Thank you for joining me for the Long Blue Leadership Podcast and Long Blue Line Podcast Network special coverage of NCLS 2025. We were excited to explore this year's Warfighters to Win theme and how the warrior ethos shapes the journey to becoming a leader of character. It's a journey defined by resilience, courage, and unwavering commitment to excellence. The warrior ethos and spirit is about more than just combat. It's about embodying the values of tough-mindedness, vigilance, and sacrifice both on and off the battlefield. We look to NCLS to continue inspiring, challenging, and equipping the next generation of leaders to not only perform at their best, but to lift others along the way. And finally, to view any of the full videos of this year's NCLS presenters, search USAFA Official, that's USAFA Official on YouTube, and select the 2025 National Character and Leadership Symposium playlist. To listen to this and all episodes of Long Blue Leadership, visit longblueleadership.org.